Now I'm going to look with you at a passage of scripture that's missing from some of the early Greek manuscripts. I want to tell you the story of the adulteress who was brought to Christ in the hope he would condemn her and perhaps throw the first stones to kill her. This story is not in all the old Greek manuscripts, and the reason probably was that early Christians felt that the grace and the goodness of Christ towards the adulteress might encourage some Christian woman to think it was all right to violate the seventh commandment, so the story was kept out of some of the early manuscripts. But it is in many manuscripts, and it's in many versions, and some of the best scholars of the world agree in its integrity. Let me read it to you. I'm reading from the NIV. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. At dawn he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. What do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down, saying nothing, and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "If any of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." Again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, till only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and he speaks to the woman. "Where are your accusers? Where are they? Has no one accused you?" She answers, "No one, sir." And Christ says, "Then neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." What did Jesus write on the ground? Many theories. Bishop Ryle said he wrote some of the sins of the men accusing the women who'd been adulterers themselves, but we don't know that. That's Bishop Ryle, a very great Christian writer. It's more possible that we have an allusion here to the Old Testament, where the finger of Jesus wrote the Decalogue. It tells us it was written by the finger of God. But because of the idolatry of the people, those tables of the law were broken, and Jesus had to write another set, and these were put in the Ark of the Covenant under the mercy seat, and blood was sprinkled on the mercy seat. That despite the fact you and I have broken that Decalogue times without number, covering it is the mercy seat, and covering the mercy seat is the sprinkling of the atoning blood of Christ. Why could Christ forgive the woman? Soon he was to die for her. But he died for you, and he died for me. The law said there had to be at least 2 witnesses, and they began the stoning. But all the men had left, perhaps because they had led the woman into sin, perhaps because they were adulterers, or at least their conscience proved to them that they were sinners and they had no right to stone this woman. So this is a story that reconciles the greatest problem in the universe. How do we reconcile justice and mercy? and only the cross of Christ can answer that. The law of God is upheld by Calvary. The Decalogue is a sacred transcript of the will of God, and everywhere in the New Testament it is acknowledged as holy, and it is enlarged, as in the Sermon on the Mount and as in the epistles of Paul. Everybody agrees that most of them are right. Sadly, millions ignore the fourth commandment and don't take time to know God, to know His Word. But this story tells us God has justified the law in such a way He could save law breakers like you and me. So the greatest issue in the universe, how to reconcile justice and mercy, was solved by the cross of Christ and illustrated in this story. I recommend it to you, dear friends. It is a guide for life, that we might see the holiness of God, but give thanks for His loving mercy and kindness. God bless you.